it's just revived all of these allegations. And obviously it's added some new names to the sort of universe of Jeffrey Epstein and what we knew about him. So, I mean, certainly there's a whole set of new people who've had to sort of start issuing statements saying that they, didn't know of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes or that they weren't involved in any way.
Will, can you explain to us, first of all, one of the claims from these documents around Bill Clinton, Vanity Fair, and perhaps Bill Clinton trying to exert some influence? That's the suggestion. Just explain it a bit more to us.
Yeah, so this comes from email exchanges between Virginia Giuffre and the Mail on Sunday journalist Sharon Churcher. Now, they're talking about sort of how Giuffre should attempt to, I suppose, either sell or place her story in various magazines and newspapers. And they're talking about Vanity Fair. And Giuffre claims that Bill Clinton went into the office of Vanity Fair magazine and warned them not to portray her, his good friend Jeffrey Epstein as a sex trafficker. And it's a somewhat sort of unbelievable claim. Not least because Bill Clinton had not long left the presidency. So it sort of portrays the former president of storming into this magazine office to try and stop perhaps an article about Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I have to say Graydon Carter, who was editor of Vanity Fair at the time, has said that this is categorically untrue. Vanity Fair published a piece by Vicky Ward in 2003 called The Talented Mr. Epstein. And Vicky Ward has since said that she tried to sort of get allegations of sexual abuse and impropriety into the piece in reference to these two women that she'd interviewed, and that the magazine determined that she didn't have enough evidence and she couldn't properly stand up the claims. And she has said that Epstein actually went into the magazine, and she says she's heard this from a fact checker, and that Epstein had also threatened her. So there was some threatening, according to some people, going on, but I don't think it was from Bill Clinton. As far as we know, there's no evidence.
Yeah, and indeed, on a sort of wider point, there's no indication of any wrongdoing by Mr. Clinton in all of this. But I'm quite struck, Will, both by that and the story that's on the front page of the Times this morning. Prince Andrew being reported to police in London over the alleged sexual abuse of a 17-year-old girl. He has always denied wrongdoing as well. But I suppose taking those two kind of things together, what have these new documents kind of prompted by way of action or response or even sort of glimpses at new detail around Jeffrey Epstein?
I mean, as we know, this is a story that's been sort of around for a while, and these are sort of allegations that have been made, but in a sort of case that was settled years and years ago. But I think it's just revived a lot of the story, and in a very uncomfortable way for Prince Andrew, clearly, because there's all these sort of lurid allegations about him, which he presumably hopes to sort of put a lid on with the settlement of his case with Giuffre in 2022, which was sort of settled without blame on either side. And so, yeah, I suppose it's just revived all of these allegations, and obviously it's added some new names to the sort of universe of Jeffrey Epstein and what we knew about him. So, I mean, certainly there's a whole set of new people who've had to sort of start issuing statements saying that they didn't know of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes or that they weren't involved in any way. So that's sort of been the effect. I mean, I spoke to a lawyer in the US who said that he thought that Prince Andrew would be well advised not to visit the United States because sex trafficking has no statute of limitations, and perhaps there would be some ambitious prosecutor. He said he thought that the main effect would probably be that or the most sort of the key danger that the prince would face might be that somebody else would come forward, or that that these allegations would trigger somebody else to make a complaint, if indeed such a person exists. So I think we're yet to see really whether these have any effect. I certainly think the first tranche of documents released on Wednesday night made for some quite powerful reading, particularly the deposition by Joanna Schoberg, who sort of partly backed up Virginia Giuffre's statement about meeting the prince. He obviously denies that they'd ever met. Another set was released tonight, which I think were perhaps less, dramatic and contained fewer sort of bold-faced names.
Mm. And in terms there of what you say, Will, about, that kind of the first release, then this overnight release now, where are we at in terms of what remains? Are there still documents to come?
Yeah, so we've had about 59 documents, and apparently there are 250. Now, some people have said to me that who sort of involved, and basically it's the attorneys who are preparing these documents for release. And someone in one of the camps told me that actually, the best documents have the strongest ones have already been released, and the ones to come may not be so interesting. But we'll see. It's hard to tell until you've seen it. I certainly think I was talking to a lawyer who sort of said, prosecutors in the United States have known about all these documents and have seen all these documents, and indeed used some of these documents to bring charges against Ghislaine Maxwell. But there might be a difference between what a prosecutor thinks when he reads this stuff and what the general public think when they read this. And so that remains to be seen.